but actually is energy itself. It is pure energy itself. The suns and the stars all run off of the energy of space. And our umbilical cord is beings who are alive in the physical body. To the primal and ultimate energy source is that umbilical cord is the breath. And when it's cut, then the body is not alive anymore. However, if you understand that you are a being of energy and light and consciousness before you came into a human body, then you can understand that after you leave a human body, you will also not cease being a being of energy and light. The big question is, if you lost consciousness of yourself, and when I say yourself, of course I mean the being that you are, the one that will come into a body and leave a body, just like you'll buy a car and then you'll get a new car, or just decide, hey, I'm just going to ride my bike. Mm-hmm. That's what I mean when I say you. So if you understand that, then you understand that you'll return. You'll return in a way, but really there's no return because you never cease being the being of energy and light. The question is, did you cease being conscious? Did you cease being conscious of yourself? Did you fall under the illusion, the mask, the shroud, the cloud that caused you to start believing you were a body with a mama and a daddy and a history and problems? Can energy and light have problems? You see, there's only one solution to problems. To awaken the part that connects you to what you are when you're in a body, which is conscious. You were a being of energy and light before you came, and you were conscious. You entered a body, and maybe you lost consciousness of yourself. And you came under the shroud, or the illusion, that you were that body, with a mama and a daddy and a history. You became less than a chicken. Because we know a chicken is in an egg, and a mama is sitting on top of the chicken. We know a rooster had something to do with the making of the egg. And then we know that the safe space that the chicken is in is just the most safe, wonderful place, kind of like embryos floating around in the embryonic fluid. The embryonic fluid. Floating around, floating around. The advantage that the chicken has is the chicken's in its egg, in a nice little nest, big warm hen sitting on top, whereas the embryo floating around in the fluid is beset by all the confusion that might be going on in what in human terms would be called the hen or the mother.
Disadvantage is humans eat eggs though.
Yeah, that is a good thing to say for when you have a question, because you don't know what I'm going to say next, do you?
Yeah.
Okay. So just imagine the difference, the advantage the little chicken has over the human. I mean, God, you know, the human, the little baby inside, it's connected absolutely to the mother in every way, in the most sensitive state that ever exists in the physical universe. What if the mother gets upset? What if the mother screams at somebody? What if the mother gets screamed at? What if and think about the chicken and the egg, nice little nest, mama's sitting on top. Now, I'm not accusing the chicken of having been conscious before. And I'm not suggesting that the chicken is going to remember that it was a being of energy and light later. But I'm going to observe that this is a safe space, the ultimate of the safe space. And then in one moment, that chicken in this safe space gets an instinctual urge that is counterproductive to everything it knows. That if it doesn't break that egg, it will die. And it's an instinctual urge. It's not at the level of, let me think about this. It's an instinctual urge. And the chicken follows the urge because the urge is more powerful than anything it has ever known. And this is wired into the DNA of the chicken. You could say it's the computer program, since now we know that everything is computers. I mean, even our car keys are computers now. If you have a newer car, everything's computers. So we now know that also there is a reality to how the DNA works. So there is this urge, the chicken breaks it, and then it gets up. You think the hen's upset? No. Jumps out of the nest onto the ground and starts looking for food. Now, do you imagine that this little chicken that immediately jumps out of the nest and starts looking for food because it's wired in there?
Not really. They go for at least 2 days under the
Okay, I'm shortening it up just to make a point. So maybe the bird has to get wet and everything, but essentially it's not upset. And the hen is not upset. And so it's going to get hungry and it's going to start looking for food. And the point I want to make is, because I know we raise peacocks together. We do. Do you think that little chicken, when it's out gone out looking for food into its life, is thinking about the hen? Not thinking about the hen. It has no history. It doesn't have a story. So ask yourself, do you believe in a story? Do you think about yourself as a story? Do you imagine that the character in this story has problems and has moods? That's the illusion. And in one moment, that illusion can snap. Once you see through it, you can abandon your story. And just walk away like the chicken. Do you have the power to claim your life? That's the question. If you have the power to claim your life, you could be part of the New Being Project. The second kind of food, which in The fourth way terminology is called food for the moon. And of course, the breath is called food for the sun. Food for the moon, food for the body. Okay. It's called food for the moon. The moon goes in cycles, right? And the waves in the ocean goes in cycles. And we know about cycles, and we know that in the physical world, the feminine is more sensitive to cycles in general than the male. But in the world of awareness, of course, something much greater. There's a much greater equality, because in the world of awareness, there is no male and female. So, if there is something, some impressions, a storehouse of impressions, like memories, and you used to have a story, and you believe you were born and you'll die, and you have problems. That group of impressions is food for the moon, and it must be eaten and digested and turned back into light. And that, if you have work to do on this planet, that is your only work. I'm not saying that you won't go and be a nuclear physicist or a janitor or a screenplay writer. I'm not saying you won't. You could do all those things. You could have girlfriends or boyfriends. You could go on trips around the world, and that would just be something you were doing. It would have nothing to do with whether you had regained the consciousness that you lost if you have a story. If you already have seen through the illusion of the story, then this conversation is not for you. You're ready for the New Being Project. The New Being Project isn't about getting rid of your story. It's the job you get once you have no story anymore. And Rudra Yoga, which is within the New Being Project, which is a primitive and unadorned path to perfection, which has one idea and one exercise, and arises out of three treasures: creation principle, the golden formula in the Magdalena way, and the Rudra Yoga lifestyle is personal responsibility. Well, the first responsibility that anyone has is to reclaim their life. Because there is no life in the physical body. It is transient. We all know that. There's no life there. Not worth talking about. The life is what you lost. You still know somewhere that you're a being of energy and light. I doubt you would be here at Liberty Advance. I doubt anybody could get in the door that didn't already have a sense that there was more to this than the physical body. So it's a pretty good guess that anybody got this far understands that they were a being of energy and light and consciousness. And if they have a story, and if they have problems, they lost one of the three. Gaining the one you lost, because you can't lose energy and light. You can't. The being you are is the being you are. It simply got shrouded, so you couldn't see it and feel it anymore. Like Aladdin's lamp, like the Genie got stuck in this absolutely beautiful lamp.
Bottle.
Gold or brass. It looks like gold, but beautiful with a stopper on it. But if you have a story, that's your condition. The being of energy and light, stuck in the lamp.
That's my favorite.
So your only work here, and you do that work in the context of everything you're doing in your life, whatever it is, whether you're being a rock star promoter, or a hydrologist, or an Uber driver, or a vegetable salesman, or whatever you're doing. The work you came here to do is to eat the moon's food and turn it back into energy and light, because it is the shroud. And time is the warp of the shroud. In space, the apparency of space, meaning little boxes, concepts, thoughts, ideas, little boxes on a hillside. And they're all made out of ticky-tacky, and they're all made out of ticky-tacky, and they all look the same. There are pink ones, there are green ones, there are blue ones, and the yellow ones, and they're all made out of ticky-tacky, and they all look the same. Anybody know who wrote that? Melvina Reynolds. Those little boxes are the shroud. That's the element of space broken up into pieces. And then time, the illusion of time, is the illusion of the body. I mean, the body is physical, it's real, but it's the illusion to the being that you are. So, that's the warp and the woof of what we call karma. And that is the food for the Buddha. And only through the practice of Rudra Yoga, or whatever it is that came to you, that has the power, it must have the power to consume all of the food for the moon in way less time than the length of the physical body's existence. Otherwise, everything is a waste of time. Otherwise, you wasted your time in this experiment of having a human body. So is this clear? Right. So I know Rudra Yoga is effective because I did it and it worked. Does that mean it's effective for everybody on the planet? I have no idea. Might be, might not be. Or it could come by any name. It doesn't matter what its name is. It matters if it has that power. If you meet someone that says, you must incarnate hundreds, thousands of times before you'll have the opportunity to be a conscious person, check out the next temple down the road. Not that temple. So that's impressions. So once you know that I want you to remember the being that you are. Once you gain the part that was lost in the shrouding, the consciousness, then you're free and still inhabiting a human body. In other words, instead of your body being thick and stupid, or like it's a crystal, so cloudy, it's crystal clear, and you just feel blissful all the time. Why? Because you don't have any problems. Because you've seen through the illusion of the story. Like the little chicken, if you could make it a conscious process rather than an instinctual process. So, I said that then you qualify to enter the New Being Project, because the New Being Project is a very simple thing. There is a change that's happening on this planet. It is happening now. We talked a little about being. that divides into many parts, goes into different times and places and forms, and gradually comes together in work. This happens over and over again in different worlds, different dimensions, however you conceive it, in places that are ready for a transformation, a leap or change. And gradually comes together, and in that process, a door is opened into the next phase of evolution. And it's a very simple thing. It's the world without the shroud. So men and women are going to keep making babies. And they can be lesbians if they want, but they're still going to have to make babies. They're going to need the male part, even if they get it in a test tube. Men and men, they could be like a gay couple, but they still have to find a way to get a baby if they want to be a family. Now, in California, all these things are possible. In Mississippi, maybe it'd be more difficult. But that's why we have federalism. We have lots of opportunities, lots of choices, which is great.
We have a baby in Alabama now.
Easier to get done.
So everyone can remember. I never met someone yet that couldn't remember a time when they were somewhere between like 3 and 8. Could be outside that range, but usually in that range. And they look at the world of the big people and they know they're insane because they still have not lost their connection with innocence. Now, when the Master Jesus said, become again as a little child and you enter the kingdom of heaven, he didn't say become childish and enter the kingdom of heaven. He was talking about if you can regain your innocence, you will remember what you are. Because the kingdom of heaven isn't somewhere else. The kingdom of heaven is here. And if we have a story and we're covered in the shroud is covering our eye, then we are in hell, because that's also here. So if you get rid of the story, and if the shroud, if you eat the food from the moon, turn it back into energy and light, which we offer Rudra practice for that purpose, and it works like magic, I can tell you. All you have to do is do it twice a day for a half hour and get clear. And every time you do it, you'll get more and more clear in general. Maybe sometimes it won't work, someday it won't work as good as another. But in general, you get more and more clear. And then, during the day, you notice you're getting fuzzy, you stop, you go to a place where nobody will bother you, which the best one is a bathroom, because there's all kind of phobias around what comes out of the body in bathrooms. So nobody will usually bother you there. You just go in, put the toilet seat down, and then sit and do the practice until you're clear again. And you do this over and over again every day and make it your work. Your work. While you're studying to be a nuclear physicist, or while you're being a vegetable grower, or an Uber driver, or a hydrologist, or whatever you might be. Even on the staff of Liberty Advance. One works the same as another in the outer sense. And there's only one work in the inner sense. That's one idea and one exercise. That's one idea and one exercise. You do that and keep doing that. After a while, there won't be gaps. The gaps will get shorter and shorter between you do the practice in the morning and night, that you'll have to stop in between. But you have to remember to notice whether you're getting fuzzy. You can actually stop in between and clarify. After a while, you'll notice there's no gap in between, and then you'll get a gift. It comes free from getting to that point. It's a free gift that just comes from the mystery. At least at that point, it's the mystery, because it comes in, and whatever this gift is, it will give you the ability in a much shorter period of time to become conscious through dreaming and deep sleep. And there is also a version of the practice, what we call Rudra flow, or the Rudra practice, that you can do in your sleep time. And Mursshud can teach you that. We teach that. Do we even have a whole section on it? Even sleep yoga? We even have a whole section on it. But you don't have to wait for that section. You can do both of these simultaneously, or you can just focus on the waking time until you've got that under control and you're not governed by the story anymore. You don't have problems. And you don't have good days and bad days. And you don't have moods that take you all over the place like being tossed on the waves on the top of the sea. It's more like you become like the ocean. Just your mind is open, free, undulating, with the rhythms of the cosmic, turning of the cosmic spheres. If you get to this point, you qualify to being part of a community where new beings are coming into bodies, who are being supported by those beings who have become qualified to go through all the stages of childhood and into young adulthood until they get to the point that they can manage this on their own. You become qualified to be the caretakers of those new beings so they never lose their innocence and never gain the cloud, the shroud, the encompassing into the darkness. They never get a story. They can have a song. They can have a song about their mom and dad and what happened in their life, but not a story. It's a very different thing. So you qualify that, and that's our mission here on this planet. This thing that you've walked into, Rudra Yoga, which is within, which is it's the powerhouse within the New Being Project, whose purpose is to create this space for new beings to come through without ever losing their innocence. So they have to go out and maybe figure out how to get it back before their body expires. Because right now, that's the way it is. It's a race against time. You get shrouded, and then your body has got a ticking clock on it like a bomb, like in an action-adventure movie where the hero is trying to defuse the bomb before it goes off. And the bomb's about to go off, which is the expiration date on the body. And then you're in a race to see if you can bring yourself back and regain the part of the three you lost. The being of energy and light and conscious. Before the expiration date. That's the way it is now. And we came to change what happens here by creating enclaves of people who've reached the point of qualifying to be guardians within the New Being Project for the beings coming through. So no one ever has to lose their innocence through the process of growing up into being an adult. No one ever has to get a story, and everybody gets a beautiful song. All the songs are beautiful, and they're just as different as the faces of the fingerprints. So now you understand what is the second kind of food, and you turn that into the third kind of food, which is energy and mind. Reconnecting yourself, energy, all that's left. And all that's left in the belly is, after the second kind of food is digested, is an umbilical cord that's always there full of energy and light into the source of energy and light, space itself. And you become physically, even though you have your physical body becomes like a clarified crystal that's brilliant and clear. And even your physical body is only of energy and light without stopping to be physical. That's all that's happening on this planet. Anything else that appears to be happening on this planet is part of the shroud, the illusion, part of the story that says you're, whatever your name is, from whatever town, with mommy and daddy named what, who had all these things happen to them up until today. I rest my case. It's probably lunchtime, right?
Yes, though I didn't hear a bell, did anybody else? I did. Oh.
What was that?
The bell a long time ago, I said I never heard the bell, so I didn't.
Well,
That's a good.
we were kind of in a looping bubble,
Yeah.
That's one big.
receiving the transmission from space. The final frontier, space. How many people here, just raise your hand if you know, how many people know the name of the town, which is a future birthplace of James T. Kirk? Only you. What is it?
Des Moines, Iowa.
Nope.
That's what.
Riverside, Iowa.
Oh, Riverside.
And there's Dominic Picard comes from France.
What? What's in France?
So did the Crackhead.
What's in France?
Captain Picard comes from
That's
France.
right. Yeah. There's a place in France where the women wear no pants. Or, if that's like sexist, it's just included on the people. There's a place in France where the men ain't got no pants. Either way, it's probably the birthplace of John Picard.
Probably.
How many of you heard the Rudra Yoga description for the first time here, this retreat?
Yes.
3 people,
Already.
4,
4.
and 5.
Here, only 2 here.
6.
The advance, yes.
6. All right. So do you feel you've heard it enough where you could say it yet? Because I'm certainly not recommending you memorize it. I don't think anything good comes from memorizing.
No.
Not in what we do. Okay, so Rudra Yoga is a primitive and unadorned path to perfection. Rudy, his name was Rudolph, and his nickname was Rudy. Later, he became Swami Rudrananda, and it just so happened that the Hindu deity Rudra fit his being and personality, expression of source perfectly. So he could be Rudy and still be related to Rudrananda. The person that trained me in this was named Jim Patordi when he trained me in it. Very Italian fellow. I mentioned one night that he would sit in the back of his restaurant, just like in the movies, mafia movies, and work from the corner of the back of the restaurant. He became Swami Shambhavananda, and he was initiated as a Swami by, there's a head of the Swami order over in India. but you have to be referred, and they were both referred by the same yogi. But when I received this exercise that we call Rudra flow, or Rudy's work, I received it from Swami, not from Swami Shambhavananda, but from Jim Patori. And the point of, for those of you that have read Rudy's books, which are all transcriptions of talks that he gave, spiritual cannibalism and...
In his own words.
What?
In his own words.
In his own words, and what else?
Beyond infinity.
What?
Beyond infinity.
Beyond infinity.
Beyond infinity, and then there one
Concerning
more?
Infinity and beyond the cosmic curtain.
Yeah, beyond, there you go, behind the cosmic curtain. You'll see him make the same point over and over again. He wanted to present something that had no cultural trappings on it, no religious trappings on it, something that was the essence of the expression of yoga as it was taught from yogi to yogi throughout time. Now maybe yogis lived in Hindu countries, but by the time they started receiving the transmission of yoga, it wasn't in a town square. Like today we can learn about yoga in malls and in shopping centers and anywhere. That is a part of the larger picture of yoga that can help a person relax enough to maybe hear something more subtle and more direct. So it's all part of, there's something here for everybody at every stage of life, and that's how it's supposed to be. But Rudy gave the essence to his students, and they recorded them and they put them out. So he went as Rudy. He never went as Swami Shambhavananda. He just happened to have been initiated. So first I wanted you to understand that this has nothing to do with culture or religion. It's the essential expression of the tool of yoga. And that was Rudy's passion. And boy, did he get a lot of flack for it from religious people. You know, mainly Indians, right? Because they were the ones that would be having an idea of what was what should be hidden, what should be not. Same way Osho got flack. This is a time where everything had to come out. So, there's always a little bit of disturbance in groundbreakers or people that break idols, which we call iconoclasts. So I received Rudy's work, The Essence of Yoga, from Jim Patori. And here's what I want you to understand. This morning, I explained to you the simplicity of the practice. You did a half an hour in the afternoon, exactly the way Rudy describes it in Spiritual Cannibalism in the 30 to 40 page range. No reason to follow any way of doing it other than straight from the yogi's mouth. Half an hour morning, half an hour in the evening. Set your day and set the end of your day, which goes into rest. And then in the meantime, if you start feeling you're a little off, if you notice you're getting reactionary or just fuzzy in some way, out of a sense of wholeness, go into a bathroom or some other place where nobody's going to bother you just for about 5 minutes. It doesn't take long. And do the exercise until you reset yourself to the point you were, or even better, from your morning practice. And if you wake up in the middle of the night and you feel a little off, do the same thing. You might be sleeping with someone else. So go somewhere where you won't disturb anybody and do the work until you feel normal and go back to sleep. So I explained that to you this morning. So I want to explain to you a deeper and more complex way of working with this practice. And I'm doing this because this is the way it was given to me by Jim. And my obligation is to give to you what was given to me. And that I practice to perfection. And when I say perfection, I always mean something that is, I got it now. Like, if you play the piano, you're a piano teacher. When I was first listening to pianists, I went nuts over Artur Rubinstein.
No, Rubinstein.
And listened to him and play the piano. And then when I was listening to cello and violin, I went nuts over Piatigorsky and Ostrach. There were certainly great ones out there, but they just got me. And one thing I learned, having listened so much to those musicians, and then having learned this practice and practiced it for a long time, was that I understood how somebody got to be a Rubinstein, or an Ostrach, or a Piatigorsky, or a Yo-Yo Ma, or anyone else. They got there by practicing. The first rule of mastery is practice. Anybody know what the second rule is? Practice. And the third rule? Practice. Right. So that's it. Practice. And when you add regularity to practice, and then you add diversity to the points between regularity, you create a dynamic that will take you to mastery over whatever it is. If your whole passion, if you have that Japanese samurai focus and passion that's like, hi! Like that, you will get to mastery. Doesn't matter what it is. Bushido. So now you understand the picture of if you want to graduate from being in the illusion of your story, being in the illusion of that you're this person from here in your body and you got your story and all that, and gain the part you lost, which is consciousness of the being of energy and light that you are. But it's not, that's the way we say it, but it's really not that. It's, you already are that. You're not regaining that. You're regaining your experience of yourself as that. So if you think about yourself in your story, and all the things that happen in the story where you get upset or angry or upset or lose things or gain things, and all of that stuff, or your parents did this to you or whatever, if you think about that, and then you think about, okay, what if I was exactly the same way, but in the being of energy and light that I never stopped being in Aladdin's lamp? A beautiful brass lamp. Maybe it's made out of gold. It certainly looks like gold. It's shiny and beautiful, and it's corked really good. If you get out of the lamp, the genie, you just go around knowing yourself that way. It's not, there's nothing left of knowing yourself as a limited being. You're in a vessel, you're using something, you're driving a vehicle that has an expiration date, yes. You're driving a vehicle that operates in a world of constraints and limitations. So there can be more than one of us, more than one of them, more than one of those. I'm not going to get into a way of looking at the grand experiment of human life, just simply because it all happens on what was best expressed in Star Trek Next Generation. It all takes place in a gigantic, as a gigantic holodeck. But we know that if you're in the holodeck and things get heated up, you don't know whether things are out of control and the computer went nuts, which it might have, or it's the program and all of a sudden your survival instinct kicks in and you're not thinking anymore. And no matter how good you get at staying balanced and staying quiet and not being in the illusion and getting reactive and hurt and angry and having problems, no matter how good you get at it, the holodeck is going to bring it to another level because it's here to serve you. And in the language of the generation of the people that I met in a project we had called the Loft, which are teen and 20-somethings, it's a religion it's a Jedi. It's a Jedi religion, the religion of the Force. The Force is an intelligence. In India, they call it the Shakti. Christians call it the Holy Spirit. It is the intelligence that runs through the center of all DNA and exists to return us to consciousness. So that's a setup. So one day, Jim says to me, I would go practice with him every morning. He had his restaurant. I just lived down the street, like 3 blocks. I would go, they had an evening practice and a morning practice. So one day he said to me, we became really good friends because there were so many things we were doing as a Sufi community who had said yes to everything that he was really interested in. So we became really good friends, and I drove him around, and I had a Cadillac Alante convertible at the time, and I drove him around in it to meet people. You know, like E.J. Gold, like Baker Roche, like people like that. So we had a great relationship going on. We each were part of the piece, just like in a mandala that you break apart into a jigsaw puzzle. Each piece has things that are like that. We call those gifts. And things like this that we call weaknesses. Although they're not that at all. They're simply the parts that align us and create the simultaneous experience of the individual and the whole. If you take the koan that Spock and Kirk create at the end of Star Trek II, is it the needs of the many that outweigh the needs of the few? Or is it the needs of the few that outweigh the needs of the many? That's like saying, God, there's a coin. Somebody said, no, it isn't, it's a head. Somebody says, no, it isn't, it's a tail. And then this big argument occurs, and the person that just sees a coin is, of course, drowned out and maybe drummed out of town. You see what I mean? So Jim says to me, I'm going to the planning office. He was adding an addition to his restaurant. And he said, I'm going to the planning office and I'm going to get some the plans we need, or just do the next step. Would you like to go with me? And I said, yeah, sure. So I would like to go. I didn't say, yeah, sure. I said, yes, I would like to go. So I went with him, and we go to the Boulder, Colorado planning office in 1975. And we're sitting there with a man who's kind of like, a caricature of somebody in a planning office. He's a white male, somewhat overweight, balding, very friendly and helpful, but also on the dry side, being a planning guy.
Plaid shirt, blue jeans.
What?
Plaid shirt, blue jeans.
Actually, in a white shirt, but you get the idea. And he didn't have on blue jeans, he was in Boulder, so he had more on slacks. He definitely didn't have a coat and tie. So he Jim talks to him, and then he goes off to get something. And Jim said, "Were you doing the exercise?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Well, you don't get it, do you?" And I said, "I want to get it, that's why I'm here." And so while the fellow was gone, he explained something to me that later we came to understand very well through the teachings of Padmasambhava and Yeshe Chogyal and Macha Glabdran and others to be the teaching of Dharma. Now, how many people here have been given the teaching of Dharma by Mursshud? Because I know she gives it. Terma.
It was given in this program.
So Jim has, and you know too, right?
Yeah, and she spoke about it
We've already
in
spoken
this.
about it.
In this course.
course.
Yeah. I even think I mentioned it one day. But you know,
Oh, maybe you mentioned it.
what?
You mentioned it.
It's well known that often we have to hear something multiple times for it to sink through the fog. See, this is beautiful. Maya's a rescue dog. She's already believes this is her space. Somebody that wasn't in the space comes in, and it's just like she's at home and somebody knocks on the door. All right. She's an equal opportunity growler. Doesn't mean she likes some people and doesn't like others. So, he says, everyone you meet has a gift in them. And often they don't even know what it is. Sometimes it is the gift that works through that person that allows them to be really good at what they do. Sometimes it's something in the person that isn't expressed in their life, but causes them to keep wanting to understand and seek. Sometimes they know what it is. And sometimes they have a gift in them. And this would be a psychic gift. We're talking about, everything in the physical world forms first in the world of impressions. Not impressions that are clouded and are the warp and woof of what we call the shroud or the veil of karma, but impressions in their pure form. The various impressions that are like the purest crystals that together, as the light from space, the clear, shines through them that creates the illusion of a fourth dimensional world on the holodeck. So he said, and sometimes these gifts that they have in them are not good for them and are holding them back. And they need someone to take them away. So that was a lot to consider. And so he said, just do Rudra with this fellow. So I did. And then one time, one of the four great Tibetan Masters who were the four pillars that brought Tantric Buddhism out of Tibet when the Chinese were up to destroy and annihilate the whole thing during that period was, now I'm sure I'm mispronouncing the name, but Mursshud might do better, Dingo Khyentse.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Right, pretty good.
Feels like it.
And we have a picture. Would you bring the picture of him Lama dancing at the next session so people can see him? You know that great, but he used to hang in the room that is now Dragonville.
I know what picture you're
You know, the
talking
one that
about,
you
but I
s-
haven't seen it in a long time, but I will look for it.
Do you remember it? It's a black and white picture. It's taken at that temple in Ladakh.
Does he have a sword?
No, he's like,
Yeah, one arm is up.
It's black and white.
yeah.
Yep.
And it's grainy because it was taken at like an altitude that is so high that they have to leave the planes running. They don't take jets there. It's up in Ladakh, which is in Kashmir, which is just a short few miles from the Chinese border. But some of the most important temples that hold the highest lamas and the greatest knowledge are in those temples. they only take prop lines, and they have to leave them running, because if they turn them off, they probably can't get them started again easily because of the altitude. So that's the picture. If you can find it, I would love for everybody to be able to see it. So he came to Boulder. Boulder was a town who had a town within the town established by a wonderful tantric master named Chogyam Trungpa. And he set up a university called Naropa. And it was dedicated to the arts and Buddhist psychology, and later it expanded into other subjects. And
You know I have a degree from there, right?
You do?
I do.
Oh, there you go. I think I did. I was about to say, somebody here, I knew that. Anybody else ever been to Naropa? What's your degree in?
Transpersonal counseling psychology.
There you go. He invited Dingo Kinsey there, and Jim Attorney wanted to go sit in the very back and practice Rudra with him. And, you know, there's a lot around when a master comes choosing to do something that isn't part of the program. But a lot of, if you look at the energy of these are the roots of our lineage, these two gentlemen. And you think about the wild hair that Rudy was. He was ready to take on the establishment. You know, drain the swamp. He was he came to do that. And he was willing to sacrifice his life for it. He was like completely Bushido.
Bushido.
Did I mispronounce it?
No.
No, the art of the samurai.
Yeah, the samurai. The one whose core is in absolute focus. Like, hey!
Yeah.
Like that. And that's what your practice will become if you succeed in digesting your container, your shroud that is the food for the moon. The second kind of food that we talk about in the prayer before we eat. We went and meditated with this man, and he didn't like it. and it was really obvious. And like I was like really conflicted because I had so much respect for this man. And Jim, he just wanted to keep doing it. So I was with him, and he was the one I was learning from. So we were doing a duo on this great Lama who completely sensitive and knew exactly what he could feel a disturbance in the force. That's what they say about, that's what Darth Vader says when he starts feeling Obi-Wan Kenobi coming around in Empire Strikes Back. So we're doing it, and first he has people line up in front of us. So Jim gets up and has me get up, and we walk away from those men and just keep doing it. And after a while, we got thrown out. And Jim was so satisfied. He was so happy. Now, whether he got something or whether I did, he might have gotten something that he wanted. And that's how Rudy is. He knows what he wants, and he goes out and gets it. And if somebody doesn't like it, that's their tough luck, because he knows what he wants, and he goes out to get it. Think about how many things in life that embody success that require sometimes making other people uncomfortable with no intention of wanting to harm anyone, but require breaking molds. So I might have gotten something too, but there was so much going on in me doing that, I have no idea one way or another, but I had a great connection to him and ended up with a better one. So I probably did. And with the planning fellow, we did it. I started doing it the whole time I was there. If I got something, fine. If I didn't get something, fine. Jim knew what he was doing. And he was much more advanced in this practice than I was in 1975. He was I would call a functional master. I don't think there's any absolute mastery, but there are stages of mastery where you can actually become master of a process, and then you just keep growing in it. It's like a cup that becomes completely full, and in its fullness it starts to brim over, containing more water than it can hold. And it can actually get a little higher than the rim and have more water in it before it starts to spill down the side. And that's in a three-dimensional universe. But in a fourth-dimensional universe, what happens is just before, when it brims up and it's bulging above, same with a sponge, it's got as much water as it can take and it's bulging, sweating, but it hasn't leaked yet. At that moment, in a three-dimensional universe, there's either a leak or a spilling. In a fourth-dimensional universe, everything is organic, nothing is fixed. So it grows, so the cup gets bigger. And so that's what happens in this practice. You can reach a stage where you are aware of it all the time. But by continuing the practice, the vessel that is practicing, the power of the practice, it gets bigger because you move into an organic world, which is a world that is not fixed. Whereas in this world, everything is fixed.
Mhm.
I'm making you aware of this because I want you to understand that if you want to get the most fruit out of this practice, you will do it all the time. And you will do it for different reasons. Now that doesn't mean when you're driving the car you have to do double breathing. I don't mean that. But I mean, just be aware that think of it this way. If I were going to go into a theistic way of explaining, I would say think this way. Or I could use a non-theistic word like the Force. But I'm going to use a theistic word, and I'm using them as synonyms. So imagine that everything, you're in the holodeck, and the intention of what runs through your DNA, which is the force, the intelligence, the Shakti, which wishes for you to evolve and complete the purpose of life on earth, which is to become again awake and be free. And there is no freedom outside of becoming awake in the consciousness, joining in the being that you are of energy and light. There is no freedom outside of that. Doesn't matter whether you have your Second Amendment rights or don't have them. It's not important. It might be important if you're concerned with protecting your family and you aren't asleep and yelling at other people, but it's all, you're not reactionary about where you want for it, or you're concerned about things and you want it limited. It's all whether you're conscious or not. It doesn't have anything to do with what your particular role in the outer life is. And so when you're in front, imagine that whatever gets dropped in front of you is part of your unique program on the holodeck that is being generated by this intelligent force that flows through your center and is working you at your limit, understanding that there is no growth unless it exceeds your comfort zone. If your comfort zone or your conceptual framework, little boxes on the your conceptual framework anybody know the 3 C's?
Yeah.
Yes.
Comfort,
Comfort,
concepts, and
convenience.
convenience! Or it's inconvenient at the time to practice.
What's the first one?
There's the 3 of them. You can use any order you want. Comfort, convenience, and concepts. So if you fail to work consciously when this force that is the center, it's the energy, it's the center of your DNA, is bringing onto the holodeck of your life someone that appears in front of you, and you forget, you think, well, it's an ordinary situation, I don't know. You forget that this is there so you can do the work I'm showing you to do right now. Without any idea of whether you succeed or not, without any idea of whether you actually receive something or not, or become awake in the process of what's going on. I certainly wasn't at that place when Jim took me to the planning guy, but I kept practicing and I did get to that place. So I can watch something on television, and I don't watch something on television. I practice this with the person that's there. So, for instance, there's no more rich place than news programs. And some very intelligent people are working in that arena. Very intelligent, purposeful people. The best kind of person that exists. An intelligent, purposeful person. Not a screamer, but a person that knows what they're doing. Intelligent and purposeful. Like Mark Levin, for instance. That's probably my best example of people that appear in the box. in news and opinion programs. But it doesn't matter what. You can work that way and you can get gifts. It doesn't matter if they're in a studio and you're watching them in a studio, it's still live. It's no different than if you're in a planning office and somebody's in front of you, it's exactly the same. And you can watch, let's say you picked one person, like say Tucker Carlson. He's been around for a long time and he's been on all the different networks. He hasn't been on just one. He hasn't held this point of view. He's not rigid in that way. He might decide to take a rigid point, but he'll bring a guest on that has the rigid other point, and they'll fight. So it's intentional. It's intelligent and intentional. And so you just pick someone like that, for instance, in the box, but it's live, he's there. And what you receive one night might be different than what he shows up with another night. And I'm not talking about the blah, blah, blah that's going on the TV. That can be interesting too, or not. It can even be painful sometimes, arguing. I don't like arguing, but it's good to expand. Good to be able to digest irritation. So, what you receive. So, in the holodeck, whatever God drops in front of you is exactly, it's a gift. It's saying, what's in here and what can you get from it? What can you do with this in the way of Bushido? We could call this whole process Bushido. I like that.
I like that too.
Because it is the way of the warrior. It is. You have to be beyond fierce to succeed in waking up, becoming again alive as the being that you are, that with consciousness you were before you came. And remember, there's a race going on. A foot race. Not a black and white kind of race, but a foot race. And there's a ticking clock. And it's the expiration date on your body. And the goal is to achieve it before that expiration date dies. But in reality, in Rudra Yoga, which is primitive and unadorned in the essence of yoga, on time isn't what is generally considered on time. On time is early. So I talked a lot more than there's time for. But I just want to say that when I made that last statement on time is early. I've set you up to be able to understand why the first of the three treasures out of which Rudra Yoga arises is the creation principle, and what that is and why it exists is something to learn and perfect. And we can do that at another time.
I got a quick question.
Yep.
So when you're talking about working with the people in the box, would that be doing the breathing exercise while you're looking at that? I know not maybe.
Yeah,
for
you're
you,
just
but-
there and you're doing the exercise. Basically, I'll tell you one little story from my journey that helped me. You could see the picture in a much bigger frame than I saw it before this. I was sent by a teacher of the Mevlevi, the Whirling Dervishes, to visit the person who had been given the fourth way work in the United States, which is the work of Gurdjieff, if any of you know that name. And there were 4 primary pillars that came out of Gurdjieff. One of them was J.G. Bennett in England, and he is the one who trained Pierre Elliott, and he opened Claymont in West Virginia as a fourth way school. And I was sent there by this Mevlevi teacher to just go. He picks me up at the airport, takes me into his home, puts me in a Pierre Elliott. The paper that I feel encapsulates everything that Pierre Elliott taught is that the yes practice. You know the yes practice? In that little red folder?
So yes to everything?
It's maybe the Yes Society or something like that. It's a little paper, and you could read that to everybody if, there's time. What did you say?
Say yes to everything?
No, that's a different practice. I just don't want to mix them up. That's a different practice, and there's a reason for that practice, and there's a clear understanding of where you have to be to take on that practice. So anyway, but that's a whole other thing. So he ended up, I was watching the Gurdjieff dances because he just let me to wander around. And I walked in and I watched the dances. And it appeared that he got mad about it. Although later I came to understand that was just a way. Sometimes a change of direction has to have some force behind it. So he was looking at, okay, what do I need to do with this person? So from one point of view, what I violated is I didn't ask permission. But in another way, I was just wandering around and I had no idea I was supposed to. None of that's either here nor there. And I look at him because he's been studying Gurdjieff's dances for a long time and continues to. And I hope you'll start to teach them here. This is dances that have in the way the body forms in the dances with the particular music creates a mandala of awakening in the body, at a body level. Is that a good way to say it? And it's beyond powerful, but it's very precise. You can't just do your own version of it because it came from Sarmang. And everything that came from Sarmang was a pure form. So it has to remain a pure form, and that's why it's not taught in public. Mm-hmm. So after that, he told me he wanted me to go in the forest and not come back until I had talked to a tree, and a tree had talked to me, and I'd become one with the tree. And it was kind of late in the day when he said that. And this is like the East Coast, and this has got more mountainous area. And when George Washington was fighting the Revolutionary War, He was a wealthy man, and he had more than one home. And he would go from one home to another, depending on where the British were. And this one of his homes was on this property of Claymont. And the other piece of property was like our barn, and it had been changed into a 2-story place of work. So let's say we ever decided, hey, it's getting a little small over here, and we decided to open up the whole bottom as a practice room and the whole top as a dorm. That would be what Pierre Elliott did at Claymont. And bigger than our barn, too, but the same building. So I go in the forest, and, it's like beyond scary, right? It's like not anything I'm particularly used to. But on the other hand, I'm practicing. On the other hand, I have that commitment unto death. I have no issue about that. I am that committed person. And I don't know how much time went by. Quite a bit of time. And I found just a huge oak. It was like an oak tree. I don't know if it was oak, but that probably was. Huge old oak tree. Kind of like our live oaks. And I would hug it and talk to it and listen to it. And I kept doing that again. And after some period of time, I had Rudra practice at that time. I do Rudra with it. I just did whatever came to me to do. And after a period of time, I became one with that tree. And I left the forest. I went back to the room in his home that he had put me in, went to sleep, told me the next morning I left the forest. And he said, well, that's good. And he drove me to the airport, and I came back to Boulder. And that's what I needed. You see how that perfectly matches Jim at the planning office and Jim at the talk of Dingo Kinsey? See the perfect match? I needed to see that was in what we call the organic world. And sometimes we call it the inorganic world. I mean, a tree's organic, but like, what if we got a rock? Some people would say, well, that's not organic. Well, it is. It's like some people will say that the things humans do on the planet isn't natural because we're doing it. We're just part of nature. It's all an expression of nature. You can always look at things more than one way, but the essence of this work is to break down all ways of looking at it. So you're not looking at things in more than one way. You're just listening. You want to listen so much that you become nothing left of you but a big ear. And that's it. Mm-hmm. That's how you will find success. No point of view is the only point of view. And yet you can appreciate everyone's point of view. Mm-hmm. You might decide to go and fight Hitler because you see that that's your point of view, that you need to go fight that point of view. And you can do that purposefully without getting angry. Or you can get angry, but you're not angry. You can express force, but not be poisoning your own heart with the emotion of anger. Because anytime you get angry at someone who violates your boundaries or your personal point of view or this, that, or the other, you're just poisoning your own heart. It's like dropping toxic, very condensed anger is such like it's like the essence of negative emotion.
Anger is like holding onto a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone.
Isn't that true? Ain't that the truth? Amen, brother. So that's an example that answers that question. For me, that answers it for me. In my journey, that's how I got the answer to your question. There were two other things I intended to do, but Jim and I had a conversation on the way over here, and I realized I hadn't properly explained to him what I do. under certain conditions that I just didn't feel anybody was wrong or right. I just didn't feel we were fully communicating yet. The two other things I was going to do, which I want to do while I'm here, is see if I can locate, through your telling me, who in this room is absolutely committed. And I'm not talking about making a commitment. That's the last thing I'm talking about. Because we all know when you make a promise, it's just you're saying, I'm going to break my promise. And I certainly in this energy feel it. I feel it! But somewhere else, you just got to break your promise, right? Somebody set me up. It might have been you, but she might have been Jack. But somebody set me up to, remember that, Rachel, where I going to teach Rudra practice and I got the commitment of everybody to do it twice a day. And the first person that told me they weren't able to do it was, guess who? Mr. Nobody. And he spoke for both of you at the time. And so that's how it is, you know. In the energy of this, you feel it, but you don't know if it'll be there. So I mean prior to this, that you were already there. And just as having, like, as I explained it earlier, late this morning, once you see the big picture of it, it just helps clarify what you're already doing and want to perfect. Is there anybody, which is bringing the conscious back and becoming a candidate to be able to pass through the door of the New Being Project, into the New Being Project. I don't know whether everybody knows this or not, but in the what we call the Bible and the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible, and this is understood by Kabbalists, who are the esotericists of the Jewish religion, the Jewish way of returning to your origin. What? Somebody talking. Anyway, that there is an understanding that Adam and Eve get thrown out of the garden for whatever, because the point of this story isn't the whatever. They get thrown out of the garden, and their job is to get back. That's the whole thing. So it could be a he said, she said thing. We all know that the patriarchy described the last period of history. So obviously it was that my mama done told me when I was in knee pants, my mama done told me, son, a woman of sweet talk and give you that sweet thing. But when the sweet talking's done, a woman's a two thing who needs you to sing the blues in the night. That's the song of the patriarchy, right?
He said.
So in the he said, she said thing, obviously Adam was the good guy and Eve was the evil one, and the snake, well, evil was the stupid one who didn't mind God, and then the snake was not God appearing in a different form to test her, but actual evil itself, separate from God. So we know that version of the story, which all the religions hold that one in place, like at the time, which is the end of the patriarchy. But regardless of how they got out, the only thing they could ever do was get back in. Now that got obscured by the priestcraft. The religion evolved into a priestcraft, where you had to do it through somebody else. But the Kabbalists, who hold the essence of the understanding, the mystical understanding of the first four books that we call the Torah, understand exactly what the codes of awareness say. And if you ever want a source to study this, there's now a very perfect university online that you can work with online to study this and master it, if you're interested in that subject. So how do you get back in? that's the thing. So the way the Kabbalists explain it, there is an angel of light with a diamond sword. And the sword, the angel is light. So we think of light, we usually think of something very bright, right? And that's the angel. But the sword is diamond. It's clear. It's the clear light. The white light is the light that all lights composed of make the white light. So that's all of creation. The clear light is what Stephen Hawking discovered just before he left his body, meaning his mission was complete. And he presented a paper 2 weeks before he died, explaining what was before the Big Bang, what was before time. That's the clear light. So one must pass through the angel of death. And the sword of the clear light must cleave and pass through. From the crown all the way through what we've known as the chakras in popular yoga, and down through all of this, the groin, all of that, and into the earth. And those who pass through that die from illusion into eternal life, their pure form, and regain the ability to see and to hear. If you think of the five senses, seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, you can compare them to like a computer screen and a mouse, and other peripherals like a scanner maybe, or microphone. That's a fixed thing. It's got to be on a desk. If it's a laptop, it goes where you go. Think about that as the five senses. Your orientation toward the physical world, which you are made of, or the appearancy of it. You have to, when you understand you're on the holodeck, you can say the appearancy of it, but it's still real. Your orientation to all of that is through these five organs of perception. That's your orientation. And it becomes like we don't think about it anymore. That's our orientation. That's what we are. It's who we are. We live that way. And, we block out things that make us uncomfortable, like, everybody's going to die at a certain point, or horrible things could happen. Or we try to just get our life organized so it's around something that feels safe. That we want to feel safe in. Boy, that's the first thing that goes. You want to wake up. Comfort, convenient concepts. And then, in Kabbalah, you re-enter the garden. And you have completed the journey of having a human life. Hear that sound come in? It gets so strong when the golden formula comes through. That sound. That's how I know that things are complete. And we can talk more about the three treasures, but there is a golden formula, and it expresses itself through this sound. When this sound shows up, and it takes over, so it's deafening to the ear. I'm not going to say ears, I'm going to say the ear, because there are these organs of perception, and then there is the essence of the organs. And then there is the organ itself in the world of formation. And when the sound of the world of formation comes through the physical form in a way that's deafening, and in the way that it becomes louder than what's going on in the room, then you know you've hit the point of a completion, a truth, a point that you can release. And everything before that, in Rudy's own words, is work. Work, work, work. So, in Rudra Yoga, the first thing you have to remember is work. And the second thing is also work. And it's another way of saying practice. Except practice is something you do. You start with something you do. You know, you do it twice a day, you do a little breathing, however Rudy describes it. But if you read before and beyond his description of the practice, he gives you the understanding of what work is. Work is an awareness that this never stops. And we're doing it all. If we want to succeed, we're doing it all the time. It doesn't mean we're double breathing all the time. And this is a sophistication of understanding that can only come through a burning desire for liberation that exceeds and destroys ultimately all other desires. And on that, I rest my case. So I'm sure dinner's ready. So.
There were two things you wanted to accomplish: to bring something here and to find someone to start a school. And the second thing, you wanted to accomplish two things while you were here. One was to start a school.
I wanted, you're right. Thanks for
for
reminding me. The two things I intended to talk about was to talk about the song and the story. And I wanted to identify in the room anybody that could stand up and say, I'm one of those. That's already clear about this. And there's nothing left but that. Is there anybody who can stand up and say that? All right.
I'm one of those.
You're not what?
All right.
She wants to know what
Now, there's no test. We're not going to have somebody follow you around and see if you're lying or not. I mean, it's important that you know you, right? And the second thing I wanted to do is to work on your song. Start with those people. So we'll just do that as homework. I want everybody who stood up and everybody who didn't stand up that is encouraged to do it. It really doesn't matter. Start working on your song. In other words, sing your story as a song. And sing it with full expression, like, I was born in St. James Infirmary. Like a song.
The Liberation Blues.
And then see how it starts to shift you out of your story. Power of sound. There's no sound in yakety yak yak blah blah blah. That's noise.
Yakety yak, don't come back. Don't talk.
Hey, thanks for bringing that up. That was an important thing to complete because we made it homework. That's great.
Do you want to know? If there's no song, may I ask you to please repeat the poem from Rumi from yesterday?
Rumi?
Yes, sir.
The drunkards are rolling in slow. The bearers of wine are approaching. The lovers are coming in from the garden. The ones with the brilliant eyes. The want to lives are leaving. And I want to live are hanging in. And they have gold.
Someone in their clothes.
And they have gold.
Someone in their garments.
Hello. And they
Grass.
have gold sewn into those who ride on. Those who've been grazing in old pastures of love are turning up fat and frisky from way up there to the ground huggers. What is that garden where apples and pears and roses are born in winter for the sake of the mother? We come from the gift, we return the gift. It must be that we are traveling from the garden to the garden. You're welcome. Only poem I ever memorized. I didn't try to memorize.
It's a good one.